Footy and stuff. We're back. I don't think anyone really minded that I was gone for an extra 4 days, but we are back. I was going to release this podcast into last week, as has been my schedule over the last few weeks. This started off as a Tuesday pod, then it sort of crept day by day towards Friday, and now we're back recording this on a Tuesday, which is great. Yeah, I thought trade period ending last week was a good time to sort of take a slight breather. Draft is in 3 weeks. We're going to get some fun content out in the meantime, but it was a good time to just take a short intermission. But we are back. This is episode 11, I believe. I didn't check before I started the intro, so I hope it's episode 11. It's episode 11, I'm pretty sure. Um, but yeah, if you're new, welcome to the podcast. If you're not new, welcome back, as I say every week. There's a lot to get through because I haven't been here for a week and a half in this chair doing this. So there's a lot of news to spout out. It's mostly the listings, couple of retirements, couple of contract extensions, and that's about that. So we'll get through that very quickly, and then we're going to do what you all presumably clicked for, which is the redraft. And then we might fill it out with the usual at the end. So that's what we're doing today. Let's do it. I feel like I've come in rusty, having not done it for a week and a half. It's not like it hasn't even been that long, but I feel like I'm like anyway. News. Where do we start? Let's go Indigenous All Stars first. Okay, so Indigenous All Stars team is back. So for the first time since 2015, that an Indigenous All Star team will take the field. They will be playing Freo on Saturday, the 15th of February at Optus Stadium. It's fun. There's not much more to say, really. I'm interested to see who's in the team, who opts to compete, who opts to not play. But it's happening, and I think it should be happening. There's no reason not to do it. It's fun. That's it. That's all I've got to say about that. Two players, I believe, in the last week and a half have signed contract extensions. Darcy Fogarty signed a 7-year extension with the Crows. That is a long time. Kane Corns is not happy about it. I'm a bit confused, but I don't really care as much as some people do. So it's fine. Cam Rayner signed for 6 years. That's a big one because he would be highly sought after at the end of next season. But he signed on. So he's now no longer on the market as of next year. Good signing for the Lions, I think. Alex Keith retired from football. Congratulations to him on that retirement. And Jaden Stevenson also called it quits yesterday, which I had to type in right before I did the intro because I realized I forgot and lucky I did because that is big news coming out of the last couple of days. Steve-O, yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, he won the Rising Star Award, was highly touted, made his way over to North Melbourne, hasn't really been able to recapture that form in any way. It's very clear in hindsight that a lot of his falling out of love with the game would coincide with that. So I'm glad he's made this decision. I think I'm really happy for him that he was able to do that, probably against his better judgment, because it's a very secure job to be in, obviously. So if he comes back, he comes back. If not, best of luck to him wherever he goes. So all we've got left now is the listings, which are pretty straightforward. So we're going to blast through those, and then we can get to this redraft for the rest of the pod. So I guess we'll start with North Melbourne. A, because they're at the top of my list, and B, because we just talked about Steve-O. So Blake Drury and Charlie Lazaro, both listed by North Melbourne. Drury never, like, he played a couple of games, never really impressed too much, so I'm not surprised. Charlie Lazaro, interesting. Because I thought he showed a little bit. I guess when you look at it from the lens of he was drafted the same year as Will Phillips and Tom Powell, and I guess the increased impact they've had on the team compared to Lazaro, I get why you'd be a little bit concerned about the progress he's making alongside those players. So yeah, interesting, but I'm not really one to question the decision. Essendon listed Sam Wiedemann, and then the week after they listed Jaden Davey. Wiedemann, at his age, they sort of have other players who are experienced who can lead the team in those positions. So you don't really have much reason to keep him around. Jaden Davey, very interesting. Highly touted by the fans. Highly touted by the fans. But I guess that shows that the club isn't always going to see things the same way as their fan base. But he also didn't get much of a run at it with the injuries that he's had. So yeah, his brother's still there. We'll see where he goes with his career because he's obviously got talent. The fans aren't just gonna see him the way that they saw him without him having had some form of talent. So interesting. Richmond, Delis Noah Cumberland and Matthew Coulthard, uh, and Mate Kalina was delisted but will be redrafted. Coulthard is what it is. He played a couple of games, never really was amazing. They're kind of in this rebuilding stage. If they don't see a spot for him, it's fine, whatever. Cumberland, I'd have thought that they'd have kept him. I think he's shown more than enough previously in the last couple of seasons to have warranted um, having a place in that depth. But again, it's the same as Coulthard. If they don't see a place for him, cut your losses, move to focus on younger players, players that you feel are more developable. So yeah, I'd have kept him, but it is what it is. Brisbane, Delise Jackson Pryor and Darcy Craven and Darragh Joyce. Those two will be redrafted though, so it's just Pryor that will be out the door in the end. Carlton, Delise Jack Carroll. I'd expect him to get picked up because he's quite good, but I get why we delisted him. I won't go too much into that. Sam Durden and Matt Carroll also dropped, but they will train over the preseason with hopes that they might get picked up in the SSP. Um, but there will be other players training as well, so there's no guarantee there. We'll talk about those players in a minute. Um, but yeah, Jack Carroll, I get it. I think we have a lot more midfield depth than some of our fans realize, and it was better, I think, to move him on rather than to keep him on board and not get the most out of a player who clearly has a little bit of talent. So yeah, West Coast, the list: Alex Witherden, Jai Cully, Kobe Bergiel. I hope I've said that right. Um, and then Josh Rotham the week after as well. So he was separate to those three, but the four players are out the door. Jai Cully is the shock there. I hope he gets a chance somewhere because he was quite good. I thought before that ACL injury. They didn't take him in that. Was it mid-season draft they took him? Yeah, they didn't take him in that draft for no reason. Like he's a good player, I think. So we'll see where he ends up. Geelong, the list Joe Furphy. I don't know much about him, but he's delisted. Port Adelaide, the list Quinton Narkle, Francis Evans, Tom Scully, Kyle Marshall, and Tom Cleary has also opted to seek opportunities elsewhere. So he wasn't delisted, but he will be gone. Narkle and Evans are obviously probably the two big ones from this group in the sense that they were literally playing finals footy like a month ago. So it's interesting, but I think they're brave moves to make for Port when you kind of want to bridge that gap between being a contender and being a proper premiership caliber team. And if you don't necessarily see those players being in that setup, best to move on. Tom Scully, as far as I'm aware, was highly touted as well. So to see him go is interesting, but I don't know enough about him to make any further comment. Um, the Western Bulldogs list Charlie Clark, another player who I thought was a little bit had a bit of potential about him, but clearly not. They've moved on. Hawthorn, the list Denver Granger Barras, Ethan Phillips, and Jack O'Sullivan. As I said before, Sam Durden and Matt Carroll have the opportunity to train on in preseason with Carlton. There's a rumor that Denver Granger Barras may also be doing that. If he's not selected in the rookie draft, they will consider letting him train on there. So another potential player who could be playing with Carlton next year. Freo in the last couple of days delisted Tom Emmett and Max Noble. Emmett's an interesting one. He played a few games this year, quite a few. But he's another one where if you don't see that potential, why keep him on board, I guess. And finally, St Kilda. They delisted Tim Membry this week, which was expected. He's going to make his way to Collingwood. Um, and then today they delist Jack Hayes, Ben Patton, and Ollie Houghton. I can't speak for Patton and Houghton at all. Um, but Jack Hayes should make his way to another club. A player that was highly touted by fans, by the club, but just suffered with injury. Collingwood was rumoured, I think. I don't know if they go for Membry and Hayes, but he should end up at another club, I think. So yeah, that's it. Lots of delistings, fair bit of news. We got through it. And now we can get on to this redraft. So today we are redrafting the 2010 redraft. The way I'm planning to do it is I'm going to do 2010 this week, 2015 the week after, 2020 the week after that, and that should take us into the draft the week after that. I think we can review that at the end of that week. And then do whatever we want to do after that. But it is draft content for the next few weeks, for the foreseeable. This draft in particular. So the way that I've decided to do all of them, but this one in particular, the first round of this draft, 2010, had 25 picks in it. So what I've opted to do is redraft the top 25, and then for subsequent redrafts that I do, so 2015, 2020, irrespective of how many picks were in there, because I believe 2015 might have had 23 when I checked it, so on and so forth. I'm just going to do 25 for both of those as well, because it's a nice round number. Provided that there are 25 decent enough players in each draft. I haven't checked 2020 yet. 2015 there definitely is, and obviously 2010 I've got here. So, without further ado, let's just do it. We're going to go from 25 up, despite a draft going from 1 down. We're going to go from 25 up. Keep a bit of suspense. I've only got 2 honorable mentions really here, and it obviously pick 25 was between these 3 players. The way I worked it out was obviously Paul Seedsman and Sam Menegola. They're my 2 that fell just outside the top 25. The way I judge this is if it were Carlton, and I'm a Carlton fan, and I'm watching this draft, in hindsight, which player out of these 3 would I have gotten the most enjoyment from watching out of the 3 play for Carlton? So this was more of a personal enjoyment pick. So in 25, just ahead of Paul Seedsman and Sam Menegola, I've gone with Luke Dahlhaus. As I said, a player I enjoyed watching at peak. He started very promising at the Bulldogs. Never really hit amazing heights. Went to the Cats, played well there as well. I just think he's a little bit more interesting than Seedsman and Menegola. So he sneaks in the 25. It's really nothing deep, to be honest. Originally taken in the rookie draft at pick 22 by the Bulldogs. He is redrafted to St Kilda in this draft. Might have been a little bit more inspiring than some of the players St Kilda were bringing in at the time. As the 2010s have not been, 2010s are done. They weren't great for St Kilda. So yeah, coming in at pick 24, we have got Scott Lycett, originally taken at pick 29 by the West Coast Eagles. He's redrafted to Geelong, which is quite interesting because they've had some ruck struggles. Ottens was on the way out at that point, I think. They never really replaced Brad Ottens, unless I'm forgetting someone very obvious. But now, particularly, they don't really have that amazing ruckman. Toby Conway is coming up, but for a long time they went without a solid ruckman. He's a premiership ruckman, 146 games for the Power and the Eagles. And he was quite reliable for both sides. West Coast moved him on because they had a few players in that position, but for Port, he was pretty reliable for a lot of that time there. So, he ends up there. In at pick 23, we've got another premiership player, a 2-time premiership player for the Richmond Footy Club. 174 games, 164 goals across 3 clubs. One of those players that could always bob up and give you something. I like him a lot, and he's going in at 23. It is Josh Caddy, originally picked 7 for the Gold Coast Suns, so not quite as high as he was taken in real life. but he gets redrafted to the Swans. Yeah, as I said, I like Josh Caddy. I think he was a good contributor, especially at the Tigers. So, yeah, I think a deserved placing here for him. Now, I think that bottom three was pretty concrete when I was putting this draft together. This is where, from about 22 to, I mean, if I look, 22 up until about 1918, they moved around a lot. So it's a glut of players that I think are fairly similar. We're going to start with Tom McDonald at 22. Tommy McDonald, peak Tom McDonald was fantastic, for sure. 53 goals for Melbourne as their main sort of target man in 2018. That was by far his best year. Outside of that year, I think he's just been more of a steady contributor. He's still around now, doing the same. Pops up every now and then. Not nearly as good as he has been in the past. Obviously, I just said he scored 53 goals in a year, which was far and away that peak in his career. But it's okay. Premiership player too. Quite a few of those on here, as I'm noticing. But yeah, Tom McDonald, 22. For a player that had the peak that he had, it shows that we're going to get to some quality players pretty quickly. Number 21. Pick 21, rather. Jared Lyons, another player who you could sort of always trust to give you something. Just a solid contributor for so many years at the Lions. Came in as they started to peak and contend. And I guess by the end, by the time they won a flag, he wasn't really able to do that clearly. But he still made 3 appearances this year. And I thought he was pretty good. Even in the 2 years of his son's career and that last year at the Crows, he was really solid there as well. 194 games across the three clubs. Pretty solid accumulator. Not bad. 21. Number 20. Number 20 is a Norm Smith medalist. And it kind of shows that players that are able to pull together those performances are falling this low. Jason Johannesson, another really solid player. Just someone who can contribute. And if you want to talk about contributions, you look no further than that grand final where he won that Norm Smith. Premiership player. And if that's your peak, where you show up and win a Norm Smith in a grand final, it's a pretty solid place to peak. Pretty solid place. Not playing as much these days, obviously, but 196 games. Could hit that 200 in 2025, and it'd be pretty well deserved because he's a solid player. I didn't mention the original draft picks for the last two players, but I'm not going back. I don't mind. He was originally drafted at pick 39 in the rookie draft for the Bulldogs, so they got an Norm Smith medalist in the rookie draft, which is pretty good. And in this draft, he's redrafted to Carlton. I don't mind. I'll take him. Um, yeah, nice. Pick 19, originally taken at pick 22 by the Bulldogs as the father's son, so that's where he would end up. It is Mitch Wallace, 162 games and 107 goals for the Western Bulldogs. Another just consistent contributor, particularly through that peak period where they won that flag. The only reason he's not a premiership player is because he was injured in round 18 of that year. So real stiff. Was their leading goal kicker in 2020 as well, which is weird, but we'll allow it. Yeah, just a solid midfielder for them for most of his career. Pick 18, Ryan Lester. Bit to say about this bloke. You talk about players who fly under the radar and just do their job week in and week out. It's this guy right here. I think the last 2 years in particular, this guy's been very good. And potentially it's a little bit of recency bias from me having him above the likes of Wallace, Lyons, Johannesson. I guess Brisbane fans could tell me if having Leicester above Lyons is valid, but you only have to look as far as grand final day this year, I think. And you'll see that this guy knows what he's doing. And he doesn't need to do a ton to make an impact. Like 18 in this draft isn't even that high. But there are a lot of really good players further up here, so I'm giving him some credit while I can, and I think he's a fantastic role player, probably as good as role players get. Originally taken at pick 28 in this draft, so he jumps up 10 picks And he's redrafted to North Melbourne, and I mean, that North Melbourne side could probably use a player like Ryan Lester. I can't lie. Pick 17, Jamie Cripps. Jamie Cripps just feels like this guy's been kicking goals forever. He's just been around forever. He's one of those players that's always good for one. Always good for one goal, Jamie Cripps. 16 and 16 at St Kilda to start his career. Goes to the Eagles, kicks 295 goals in 235 games, just casually. Solid. And he's number 17. But another Premiership player as well, added to the list. There's a lot of them, I told you. Originally picked 24, went to St Kilda, as I said, redrafted to Port Adelaide in this draft. Anyone would take Jamie Cripps in his peak, I think, because as I said, he's always in and around it. Pick 16. I've gone with Michael Hibberd here. Just really good. Really good. I suppose he wasn't as great for long enough, and I guess that's why he's here and not pushing into the top 15, top 10 sort of areas. However, 197 games for the Bombers and the Demons, all Australian in his first year at Melbourne, pretty reliable, flew under the radar often for both clubs, I'd say. And he's a Premiership player as well, much like many of the players on this list. So, pretty good. Number 15, talk about consistency. Brodie Smith. You have a player in Brodie Smith. 262 games for the Crows. All Australian quite early on in his career, 2014. Would have been, do the math, fourth season in his career. Was key in that Crows rise in the mid 2010s. Still played 15 games last year. Not quite what he used to be, obviously, but another very solid defender at his peak and someone who can still contribute. So, pretty good. And he comes in at 15th. Funnily enough, he was drafted pick 14 in this draft by Adelaide. And because of one more father-son that ends up above this pick, he's pushed back to 15, drafted by Adelaide. So they pretty much nailed the pick, if anything. But yeah, another Crow above him, Josh Jenkins in at pick 14. Started at the Bombers, didn't play a game. And I think they might be regretting letting someone like Josh Jenkins go, considering some of the struggles that they've had in their forward line since that time. 147 games at the Crows, 296 goals, just really solid. He had a 5 year stretch. And I've got here in my notes, this 5 year stretch, he kicked 40, 46, 62, 45, and 46 goals in a 5 year period. So just like that was obviously his peak, and he was just consistently kicking goals. Really good. 2 games at Geelong to finish his career up. Didn't do much there, but still really solid in his peak, as I said. So yeah, deservedly number 14, I think. On to pick 13, and we have landed on the original number one pick, David Swallow, redrafted to Melbourne in this draft. 13 doesn't necessarily look outstanding on him here when he was pick one, but he's still been a very good one for the Suns. A very loyal player, sticking there for all this time as their first ever national draft selection. 240 games, one-time best and fairest, co-captain for 3 years. He's their games record holder. It's not bad at all. Still gets games, much like a lot of the players on this list, and to that point, he can still contribute pretty well as well. So yeah, not too bad. Number 12, we have a retired player here, Paul Puopolo. What a fun player to watch. Not much to say past the surface here. 196 games, 185 goals, 3 flags on the resume, good enough for 12th. Pretty simple. He's a very good player. Originally taken pick 66 by Hawthorn as a mature ager. He's redrafted to Gold Coast in this draft, as many players here will be, because they had a lot of picks in their first draft moving into the top 10. But yeah, love Poppy. Very good. Pick 11, Cam Guthrie. The solid players just keep coming. Cam Guthrie's certainly one of those. 240 games at the Cats, Premiership player, All Australian in 2020 in a grand final year, 2-time best and fairest, one best and fairest in the runner-up year in 2020, one in the Premiership year in 2022. Has struggled with injury recently, and that's maybe affected his placing here. Again, it's the whole recency thing. I might have put him higher if he's been playing as well as he had in the past over the last couple of years, but I think it's still a very good placing when you see the players that are coming into this top 10. So, Guthrie, very good. Originally picked 23. He's gone a lot higher here, ending up at Gold Coast. So, yeah, solid. Number 10, pick 10. Dion Prestia. Another player who's had it so rough with injury, but nonetheless, three-time premiership player. One-time best and fairest in a premiership year. Just so solid when he's not injured. They don't call him the human meatball for nothing. Just gets in there, gets it done. He was originally picked 9 in this draft. He's ended up at pick 10, but there is a father son later. As I said, that pushes everything back. So he's ended up in pretty much the same spot. Yeah, I hope before the end of his career we get a really solid run from Prestia that's not affected by injury because Richmond are going to need it, A, but B, he's just so good to watch when he's fit. Pick 9. Originally taken to pick 33 by Melbourne, redrafted to Essendon. It is Jeremy Howe. We're starting to get into really solid territory here, as you can see. 252 games at the Demons and the Pies, just so reliable. Still fantastic to this day, to this very day. Premiership player at the Pies, leading goal kicker for the D's in 2013. So he can do it at both ends still, like to this day when the Pies need him to, despite him predominantly being that defender and that defensive presence. He can go forward and make an impact. Just so solid. And so important to them as well. I think if he has that full season this year, they're gonna really benefit from that when they're trying to push for another flag. So Jeremy Howe, fantastic. Pick 8, originally pick 8 in the 2010 draft. Dyson Heppel, just another really good player. I think with the names you're about to hear above Dyson Heppel in this draft, this is about as good as it gets in terms of players who haven't really got as much team success to show for their careers. Obviously, he did spend his career in a mostly average Essendon side. However, he was their captain for 6 years, one-time All-Australian, one-time BNF winner, rising star from this class as well. Just such a good player. And obviously, he's not going to regret spending his career at Essendon, or else he would have left. But just a player with the ability to have achieved so much at a club that was at a better spot when he was there. So it's unfortunate that he probably came into Essendon at the wrong time. However, doesn't take away from the fact that he's just a fantastic football player, in my opinion. Pick 7. Originally taken to pick 26 by the Eagles, redrafted to Richmond. It is Jack Darling. Let's get the stat line out of the way first. 298 games, 532 goals, and counting, because he makes his way to North ahead of 2025. So he's going to look to boost those numbers a bit, but just such an elite player at his best. Such an elite player. Premiership player, 4-time leading goal kicker at the Eagles, one-time All-Australian Blazer as well, in between those two grand final years. So from about 2015 to 2018-ish, he was just so good. Playing alongside Josh Kennedy as well. So it was the two of them bouncing off each other. It was just, yeah, so good. Deserved placing in this list, pick 7, I think. Speaking of players who were just massive parts of the success that this Eagles side ended up having, Andrew Gaff comes in at pick 6, originally pick 4, so he drops a little bit. But yeah, just so good throughout his peak. 280 games. Obviously finished up this year. One-time BNF, two-time All-Australian. One of those in a premiership year, although he didn't play in said grand final actually due to suspension, as we all know. But controversy aside, just in those years, such an important player for them. Such a good player. And they probably would have won that grand final by more had he been playing. Because he was just about their best player at the time, I think. He would have been up there, certainly. But moving into the top 5, here is that father-son first. Originally taken by the Bulldogs at pick 41, Tom Liberatore. So good. So good. We've spoken to players that fly under the radar a few times in this ranking, and he just epitomizes that, I think. 218 games for the Dogs, premiership player, best and fairest winner. And one thing that stands out to me with Libba is that where a lot of the midfielders in particular in this draft have really dropped off for whatever reason, Libba is just still so hard to stop. Obviously, we head into a new season, so you never know what can happen. But I think in terms of longevity, especially amongst the midfield group, as I said, he's certainly shaping to be the one from this draft class that really rises above the rest and continues to show that quality. Just so good. So good. Pick four, originally taken pick 11 by the Gold Coast Suns, so a bit of a jump. Um, 220 games, 462 goals. It is Tom Lynch. Talk about someone who has just been absolutely hammered with injury, by the way. He should be on quite a few more than 462 goals. Because the last couple of seasons have just been a write-off completely. Just an outstanding full forward at full pelt. Two-time premiership player at the Tigers. Has won best and fairest at both the Tigers and the Suns. Former Suns captain when he was there as well. Multi-time leading goal kicker at both those clubs. The 8 games across these last 2 years have certainly hurt his reputation. I think people are going to start to forget if he doesn't get back and start playing games consistently. They're going to start to forget how good this guy is. But if he gets fit next year, he could be a huge leader for this Tigers team that we assume are going to struggle pretty badly. So he really needs to strap that forward line on his back. And I trust that he can do that if he gets the consistency. But yeah, so good. Pick four only for me, but yeah, unreal. Kicking off the top three, I don't know how many people would have this guy here because I think he's one of the players that straddles the line a little bit when it comes to those that sort of just go a little bit unnoticed at times. But I think Isaac Smith is a top three player in this draft. When you look at his career, he was just so good so consistently. For two sides, two premiership winning sides, won 4 flags all up, which is more than anyone we've mentioned on this list can say. Took home Norm in his last as well. Obviously, we all saw what he was capable of as a young star at the Hawks in that three-peat team, but for him to then move down the highway and do it one more time at Geelong and be the best player on the ground in that grand final by such a significant margin, I thought, man, I honestly think he could still be doing this now. He could still be doing it now. I'm well aware he obviously retired at a great time for him and his family, but he never really seemed to tail off ever, I think. And he could still be playing now. Such a fantastic player, Isaac Smith. Well deserved number three on this list for me. Pick two, Luke Parker. What a superstar. What a fantastic leader as well. Well, we always bet on about Sydney and what they stand for as a club, the culture they uphold, the Bloods culture. Um, that wasn't sarcastic. I didn't mean to do that. I was just putting it in. Anyway, Luke Parker has been at the center of all that since he walked in that club. Just an elite midfielder. 293 games, 213 goals for the club as well. So he has some attacking presence as well. 2012 Premiership player. Was there for 4 other grand finals as well. And I think that's worth mentioning despite the losses because someone has to get him there. And he was always in and around it playing a role to help get them to that point. So he's just been fantastic for so long. Co-captain for 5 years, 3-time best and fairest, 1-time All-Australian, 2-time most courageous player voted by his peers as well. He heads over to North next year and they'll look to get a couple more good years out of him. And I have no doubt that his influence will do them wonders, as we've already mentioned in previous episodes, talking about that trade and whatnot. He's just unreal. And finally, pick one, the best player in the 2010 draft, in my opinion. If you disagree, sound off in the comments, on the clips, whatever. Share this, find out what other people think. But it's Jeremy McGovern. It is. He's just the cream of the crop from this draft class. And he was a rookie draft selection as well. Pick 44 in the rookie draft by the West Coast Eagles. What a player. What a leader. What a defender. Just absurd. Where most of these guys are sort of beginning, as I spoke about with Libba, to take that downturn, Jeremy McGovern looked to be on that path. Like we thought he was kind of done. Not as impactful as he used to be. A little easier to beat. And then he won his first club best and fairest this year at the age of 32 and picked up another All-Australian Blazer and had perhaps one of his best years ever. He obviously has 4 other All-Australian Blazers for a total of 5 across his career. Those were in 4 consecutive years between 2016 and 2019. One of those was a premiership year as well. And of course, he played a huge role in that game too. He actually kicked off that game-winning play. So it went from him to Vardy to Ryan to Dom Sheed. Am I missing a player in the middle there? I don't know, but just so good. Yeah. Is there anything I'm missing? I think I listed everything for him. Jeez, he's just number one. He's just number one for sure, in my opinion. I'd hear arguments about Parker, but yeah, McGovern, it just is fantastic. So with that, that's the top 25 from the 2010 draft. Give me your opinion. Sound off in the comments, as I said. I'd love to hear what others think about this one. But yeah, very talented draft. I think, especially once you get into that top 10, you see the top end of this draft is very good. 2015 is next week, and that is as good, if not better. So that'll be fun as well. Stay tuned for that. Alrighty, that was fun. We're going to move on to a Gridley to finish us up. It seems like a pretty straightforward one. It's a James Aish one. We have Freo, Collingwood, and Brisbane across the top, as we would expect. Down the left-hand side, Rising Star nomination, James Aish teammate, and a finals player at multiple clubs. So for two or more. Um, that row might be interesting, but we should be okay. Let's do it. Where do we start? Let's start with the teammates. I feel like that's. I mean, any current Freo player should. Tom Emmett just got listed. We'll start with him for the teammate. 1%. It's actually 1.4%. So not bad to start. As usual, we're shooting for 20. Oh, okay. So when was he at Brisbane? When was he at Collingwood? I think he started at Brisbane. Um, and then he moved to Collingwood, and then Freo. So Brisbane, early to mid 2010s, he would have been there. Only 53 possible answers. Would someone like a Joel Patfull have been? Yeah, he was there till 2016, so he's got to be one. That's a good answer. Good for me. Collingwood, so late 2010s, mid to late 2010s. He was there, and there's a lot more answers here, I think. 70, so not that much more, to be fair. Who played with James Aish at Collingwood? Would Steve-O have played? We're leeching off the we're just leeching off the listings here, but would he have? Oh no. So this is down to me not remembering which years he played at Collingwood. I feel like I should go someone who played there a little bit longer. Um, Jeez. Alex Fasolo would have played with him. I think, yeah, 2011, 2019, he would have had to. Yeah, that was probably a smarter one to go with. Another 1.4% in a Carlton jumper. Nice. Um, Finals player for multiple clubs. Collingwood Freo. I'm going to go Lee Brown for one of these. I just don't know which one. Could also go Lee Brown for the Freo Rising Star. I actually might do that because I feel like it'll be easier to get the other ones. Yeah. 0.2. Nice. Who else put Lee Brown? Interesting. Collingwood Rising Star. Stevo, but he won the award, so I'm not going to go with him. Um, a Pies Rising Star nom. I should just go with any kid. Someone like a Trent Bianco might have won it. Nope, never got nominated. Undo that. Let's not be dumb. Did anyone from these clubs get it this year? I don't even harp on that too much. Let's do the finals players first. Finals player, multiple clubs. Blake Carousella for Collingwood. Not bad. Fremantle. Would Crowley have played in a Bombers final? I don't think I want to risk that. Brisbane, Mitch Robinson. That feels obvious. It's not that obvious. We'll take it. 1.7%. Frio. Um, Geez. Frio finals player for multiple clubs. Should this be obvious? I mean, I don't want it to be obvious, obviously. I've just said obvious a lot of times. Who? Oh dear. I should have gone Lee Brown here because I feel like the Rising Star would have been easier to get in hindsight. Although the points for Lee Brown was very good. Oh no. I'm gonna try Ryan Creeley, and if he's not, I don't have an undo. Oh dear, we've blown it. Great. Let's go Kai Lohman for a Rising Star now. Not bad. Collingwood Rising Star. Josh Dacos. I've already blown it, so I don't care. I didn't even get one. I just got 213. That's embarrassing. Well then, what a what a sour note to finish on. I absolutely blew that. That might be the end of Gridley on this podcast because that was deplorable. That was disgusting. But with that, I think we're done. I think we're done this week. Thank you for tuning in. More redrafts will be coming in the next couple of weeks. They're smaller, a little bit more casual episodes, aside from the news, obviously. But yeah, there'll be a couple of those. Then we'll be here to review the draft. And then we've got some more fun stuff coming after that. But for now, thank you for watching. Please follow us on all socials. Links are in the description. Please like, subscribe, give us ratings on Spotify and Apple Podcasts because those help as usual. But yeah, aside from all that, I will see you all next week. Have a good one. Goodbye.